power on.
The following is a presentation of the Sovryn Tech podcast feed.
From days of long ago, from uncharted regions of the universe, comes a legend. The legend of Sovryn Tech, podcast of the universe. A mighty tech show, loved by anarchists, feared by authoritarians. As Sovryn Tech's legend grew, peace settled across the galaxy. On planet Earth, a union of egoists was formed. Together with the open source, retro gaming, and liberty-loving communities, they maintained peace throughout the universe. Until a new horrible menace threatened the galaxy. Sovryn Tech was needed once more. This is the podcast of super host Dr. Brian Sovryn. Specially trained and sent out into the galaxy to bring back Sovryn Tech, podcast of the universe.
Woo, the man with the plan is on. The Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the rated R radio star, as some have said, the most dangerous man in the world today, and as many say, and I can back it up, baby, the greatest podcaster alive. It is episode 492 of Sovryn Tech, and whoo, do we have a lot to get into. But I gotta tell you, I looked before me at my Windows 7 Dell 7480 14-inch screen. I looked before me, and as is an off-site in my over 10 years in podcasting, I see Audacity. Now, why the fuck am I bringing this up? Because, wow, does it look different right now? I know. Well, hey, look. I know that I have a lot of, hey, when you are the best podcaster alive, when you are the podcast champion, you know a lot of people listen to you to know how to do it. Well, for all of you who, because I know I have a lot of other podcasters that listen to me, and they follow the line, baby. I know you're wondering. And what I'm going to tell you is they have recently updated. Audacity has updated to version 3.2. Now, for a very long time, as in for a couple years, I actually stopped using Audacity. I ended up using a fork of Audacity called Dark Audacity. Why? Because after, I think it was like version 2.3 or 2.4, somewhere around there, a company had bought out the development, shall we say, of Audacity. Of course, it's an open source project. That's the main reason that I have used it through the entire run of Sovryn Tech. No other software has ever been used. I've been tempted at times to maybe try some other things out, or even like say on an iPad, perhaps give a shot with with GarageBand, which for Apple users, great option for making podcasts. Anyway, I don't want this to take a ton of time because we got a lot of other shit to get into, and we're not going to be praising Apple through much of it, but we're going to hit everybody, all the tech giants. You know how this goes on Sovryn Tech. Anyway, so there was metadata being collected that was privacy encroaching. And for a long time in most Linux repositories, you couldn't even get like the latest version of Audacity. They basically stopped it at like version, again, I think it was version 2.3 or 2.2, something along those lines. We talked about it on Sovryn Tech when it happened. And recently it was discovered, Audacity announced, hey, we're not engaging in that anymore. Like that stuff's just not happening. Probably because they saw a massive drop in users. And so I said, okay, fine. I'll go back to it. I'll give it a shot. Let's see what Audacity's doing. And wow, even then, and this was some months ago, was it a shift because they switched away. And I already talked about this. If you're a Sovryn Tech patron, of course, just go to patreon.com/SovrynTech and you get to hear all the nitty gritty conversations, the wild conversations. And oh, baby, do I mean they are wild, on our Wednesday Q&As and elsewhere. I've already covered some of this, but this is even going beyond that. So they had changed to where they were doing, instead of .aup files as like your project file, they created a .aup3 that was like a giant zip file that contained everything. Now, this caused you to have a lot more hard drive or hard disk space available because it would not compress the file, until you told it to, and you basically closed Audacity with the project that you were creating. Overall, I liked the change, but I had to convert, when you've been doing this for a decade, there's a lot of stuff to convert when you're looking at varying project files, which I do often, copy pasting and whatever else that I have to do from that. So that was fine. And then just out of nowhere, of course, I use portableapps.com. So I get through portableapps.com, I get, notifications, which is part of the reason I love using it. Granted, I've been using portableapps.com also for well over a decade. I mean, almost since they launched, I've been using that. I used that back, when I still had XP machines that I was running. That was before Windows 7 even came out. I've been using Portable Apps. Portable Apps, I've talked about it before on Sovryn Tech, but if you don't know what that is, now you can run it via Wine if you want. So you have options to run that. There's ways to run it on Mac. There's ways to run it on Linux, even Chrome OS and so on. But if you're running it native on Windows, it's very easy. Anyway, what I do is every Windows machine that I go through, and I'll even do this on some of my Linux machines, but every Windows machine I go through, I don't have to go through the process of installing, or at least not all of it, installing all the software that I like to use on a Windows machine. I just transfer this entire file or this entire folder, which is my portableapps.com folder, from one computer to the next. And it has all my apps. It has my web browser. It has Audacity. It has OBS. It has Telegram. There's just almost everything I use has some kind of portable version of the app. And if it doesn't, I try not to use it. But even like tag and rename, even simple stuff that I use for MP3s. But this way, I get a new machine, I'm just up and running, inside of 30 minutes of what it takes to transfer all of these portable apps. Instead of having to install it on the new machine, I just transfer them over. Okay, it's fantastic. And the side benefit of it is portableapps.com, you can just hit check for updates on, it basically creates its own little start menu. And when I hit check for updates, it will go through all the software that I have installed, or at least everything that I installed through portableapps.com. Some apps are independent, and I have to handle those separately because even though they're in my start menu for portable apps, I still, basically, they're not part of the update cycle within portable apps. That's coded, within, what they make available. So they make the install process easy, but they also make the update process easy. And for Windows machines, it's not like smartphones, or an iPad where it will tell you what apps have an update and you can just hit one button and everything, you hit update all and everything gets updated. With Windows, traditionally, you have to go through a huge process. This is one of the long-standing advantages of Linux, right? Is, just apt get upgrade or whatever, like put it into terminal and boom, it will run through everything that has an update through the package manager. Which makes life very easy. With Windows, it was never that case. You had to go check for updates on basically every piece of software you have, from VLC to Firefox to, take your pick. That was one of the big selling points for UWP apps, right? Which, of course, Microsoft has, left in the dust with Windows 10. But anyway, portableapps.com for over 10 years has allowed for this feature for you to update all the apps all at once. And so I got a regular update. I love that. And I got a regular update for Audacity to version 3.2. And holy shit. The icons changed, kind of the organization, the setup where everything is. Normally there's like 3 or 4 kind of menu bars at the top that I'll have set up. All of that got compressed to like 2 bars. And it did it pretty well. But the real beauty here is, and I'll certainly be taking advantage of this going forward, the real beauty is there is now a live effects button on the left-hand side of what you're recording, where it's a non-destructive process, meaning that you can change it on the fly and more or less live as you're going through it. It's not something where I could suddenly, as I'm talking to you right now, I don't know that I can necessarily make my voice change. Normally I would just do that on my own. I just use my own voice techniques, I guess. I wouldn't use software for that. Like if I'm going to talk like Brian Soviet, or if I'm going to talk like some kind of reptilian or something along wait a minute, reptilian, whoa, that's my normal voice. No, this is the act. No. Anyway, yeah, I don't know that it will necessarily allow me to do that, but I'm going to be experimenting with it more. But I mean, I just opened this up to start recording and I saw this huge difference and I'm like, what the hell just happened? And anyway, I looked at it, I had to take an extra 20 minutes or so just to check everything out. And I like what I see. So Audacity, man, if you haven't tried it in a while, might be a good time to do it. Has Adobe, what is it? Audition, right? Has it had these features for 20 years? Yeah, sure, probably. But it's Adobe, so fuck it. Why the hell would I use that? Anyway, okay, so welcome to the 21st century, Audacity. I love it. No, really, this is great. And apparently they're making other big moves. I applaud this direction that they're going in. Something that I'm more or less also applaud. Let's get into the Foreplay here and talk about, that was just a nice little side rant. Maybe you just discovered things you want to start using, which, hey, great if you get to walk away from this show with actionable items. But anyway, let's get into some of the Foreplay here, and we'll open this thing right up with a surprise announcement. Surprise development, really, though I'm not too surprised by the matter. And link is in the show notes for this. And we're going to be talking about something that isn't going to release to market until at least 2024. Okay, so we got a couple years. And admittedly, this is a subject that's near and dear to my heart, meaning it's about physical media. It's about optical discs. And I'm not kidding. Optical discs are near and dear to my heart. There are a few things I love as much in this life as optical media. If you knew the amount of time, if the amount of time you spend with something is a reflection of how much it means to you, boy, let me tell you how much optical discs mean to me. Outside of Mrs. Sovryn, there may be nothing else. Well, no, MP3s maybe would beat optical discs, but even then, I don't know. Of course, I'm notorious for being a defender of Blu-rays, not 4K, not 4K, not 4K. Blu-rays, 1080p. We've innovated past perfection at that point. Okay, that's it. 1080p is as good as it gets. After that, it doesn't look like movies anymore. You've lost the director's vision. You've lost all kinds of vision. And who knows what the hell's going on in your brain when you watch that. But that's besides the point. So, well, actually, it's kind of the point with this. Anyway, a company that I do believe, the company is Folio Photonics. I want to say they're out of Texas. I think that's what I had seen. But anyway, I only, say that because it might make for a great everything's bigger in Texas joke, because Folio has developed a optical disc that can hold 1 terabyte of data. Now, I'll admit, even just talking about this, okay, how much can this, how much can some type of physical media store on it? I mean, I get the warm fuzzies, thinking back to the 90s when, we were talking about jazz drives, jazz drives and zip disks, and, the transition from, like 5 1/4 discs to 3.5 inch floppy disks. And so, I mean, oh man, it used to be so exciting, like the idea that jazz drives could do 200 gig or whatever. I mean, talking about being on the jazz, it was amazing. So anyway, Folio has come out with a 1 terabyte optical disc. Now, interestingly, in their marketing around this, they instantly are talking about, this is going to allow for, the theoretical 8K disc, meaning that you could store an 8K movie on, a 1 terabyte disc. And so you could go beyond 4K. Now, I have done entire episodes. If I think of it, I'll link to one in the show notes, even though it should be easy to find. Like, I think I titled it 4K is bullshit. Regardless of that, I've done entire episodes about how 4K is meaningless. And again, 1080p, that's it. That is the there's no point in going past that. Okay. So, it's clearly a marketing tactic, I think, on Folio's part to say, hey, like, oh yeah, this is going to allow for 8K films. Like, the market is barely just starting to break into 4K, even though you may think that 4K is, it's fucking everywhere. Okay, yeah, there's TVs, and most of the TVs have gotten to 4K, but the content, and especially when it comes to optical media, to physical media, like all of that is still far behind when it comes to 4K as far as development and release. I mean, even like Paramount, you think of like movie studios, they've just recently, and how long has 4K been around for? What, 5, 6, 7 years? Actually, it might be getting close to 10 at this point when the first like 4K discs were announced. It's been 5 years plus. They're just now starting to be willing to put out movies in 4K. In fact, it's kind of a small problem where they will announce the DVD and Blu-ray. In fact, usually they'll come in the same case, but they'll announce the Blu-ray or the Blu-ray and DVD. They won't announce a 4K version. Cinephile, a movie buff, will buy the Blu-ray because they want this new movie that's coming out. And then a month later, because the Blu-ray actually sold well, then maybe Paramount or Warner Brothers or whoever will actually release a 4K, or they'll have it planned and they won't put it out until later. Now, that's honestly, like, yes, that's a thing. That's an annoyance. And I know there are physical media collectors, because I talk to them, because, we're a very, close knit club, even though, again, I don't buy 4K. I've talked to them where this is an annoyance, and it is an annoyance for them. I mean, the irony is, here's something you really got to grok. 4K content, whether it's on disc, online, whatever, the reality is the same pretty much any way you get it. There's two realities to it. One is that most 4K content isn't actually natively filmed in 4K, and it's upscaled from, 720p, 1080p, whatever they ended up doing, probably 1080p. Okay, so you're not actually getting true native 4K. You're getting something that's upscaled. And as I've brought up in the past, if it's upscaled content, then, you don't have to spend the extra money for a 4K disc. Just buy the Blu-ray and have a Blu-ray player that upscales to 4K, because that's, in the long run, that's going to be infinitely less expensive. Besides the point, okay, so there's that. And that means that, because where this is going, that means that in the future, there might be a new process to better upscale 1080p content into 4K. And then, so it's going to go through remastering. You're going to have to buy the movies basically all over again, which you've probably already done twice at least, because you bought it on DVD. Maybe you bought it on VHS, then you bought it on DVD, and then you thought, okay, yeah, I'll go with Blu-ray. Besides that, okay, and trust me, if you have security concerns, you have all these other kind of concerns, we got plenty of stories to get into as far as all that goes. But I want to talk about this, because rarely do I get to talk about new developments in physical media. And I think it's interesting, if not exciting, and really it might not be exciting here, as you'll see, to get into. So anyway, the other problem with 4K content is that even if it is native 4K content, guess what's happening with that? For it to fit onto a 100 gigabyte Blu-ray XL disc, which is where things top out. If you're wondering how much bigger is this than the biggest optical media we have, the biggest optical media we have right now is effectively what we call BDXL. Okay, Blu-ray disc XL. And that generally tops out at about 100 gigabytes. Though I think even that Sony was developing like 250 gigabyte discs. So you're at least 10x to what? 5x, whatever, like in size. So this is a massive jump, no doubt about it. And it's impressive that Folio was able to pull this off. Okay, but here's the thing. So to get 4K content onto what is generally a 100 gigabyte disc, or a little bit more, there is massive amounts of video compression that go on, and audio compression, by the way. Let's be clear on this. You're never, whether it's online or on physical disc, you are never getting raw 4K content. It is always a fucking trick. They're always lying to you. They tell you that you're buying 4K? No, it's one of two possibilities. You're either buying heavily compressed raw 4K footage, so it's not really 4K, or you're buying upscaled 1080p content. You're never buying 4K. 4K effectively does not fucking exist. You got me? Not on optical media, not on streaming. Do you know what it would cost to stream raw 4K? Holy hell. I mean, you want to talk about a bill. I mean, watching, a television show in 4K would probably be, you'd be doing, 5, 6, maybe a terabyte a day. I don't know. Maybe more than that. If you watched a movie, who the fuck knows? So maybe this 1 terabyte disc or more, Folio did say that they could actually go beyond 1 terabyte. And it's impressive because as far as cost goes, you're looking at like about $5 per terabyte with the way that they're producing this. That's impressive. And that's going to lead to what this is really for. It really has nothing to do with movies at the end of the day. But I just want my points to be made. Okay. Anyway, and hopefully maybe the market will speak, and it's not like to be quick, it's not like I'm against physical media. Are you hearing me? I love physical media. I have probably shy right now of about 2,000 Blu-rays and DVDs. 2,000. Okay? Do you think I hate this shit? No. Granted, I don't buy any new movies, minus maybe Top Gun Maverick, but I don't have a problem with physical media. I'm not saying physical media is dumb. I am saying that the optical trickery that they're engaging in with you is just pure bullshit. And I'd love it for the market to speak and say, no, I'm not buying 4K versions of this or that. I'll take the Blu-rays. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we're entering a time where for a long time, for many years, as long as 4K has been out there, usually the special features were actually on a Blu-ray disc, like on a traditional 1080p Blu-ray disc, and they weren't on a 4K disc because you needed all that disc space to get the compressed, not raw, compressed bullshit 4K content. Okay? All right. Now we're getting to the point, though, where special features are getting put onto the 4K disc itself and not being included on the Blu-ray. This is most readily apparent in the recent re-release and remastering, by the way, new 2K scans the whole business, of Star Trek V and Star Trek VI, where on the Star Trek VI disc, you get the director's cut and the theatrical cut on 4K. The Blu-ray, though, does not have it. Basically, the director's cut of Star Trek VI has never been released on Blu-ray. Fortunately, I already have the DVDs. Also, I make my own Blu-rays often enough, and I got a 4K copy online, and then I burned that onto a disc, turned it into with the Blu-ray folder, the whole thing, so that it can play in a traditional Blu-ray player. That's how serious I take my optical media. If you can't hear it in my voice, I take this subject incredibly seriously, and I'm very knowledgeable as far as it goes. So anyway, So a 1 terabyte disc, now you might be able to, with maybe an hour and a half movie, maybe, you might be able to put raw 4K content on there. Now, how is this going to work? But you've already been buying 4K discs, or you thought that you were in the 4K heaven, with everything that you're getting, and now you find out, oh, it's all a fucking lie? And maybe now, when this comes out in 2024, 2 years from now, you'll actually be able to see 4K content, like real raw 4K content. Can your TV even handle that? Is there going to have to be a new version of HDMI to be able to handle that throughput? These are all very good questions, for you to ask. And you're going to find that nobody has answers. So what's this really all about? I gave all of that preamble, and that was effectively preamble, to say that this new technology has no real bearing on the entertainment industry. It ultimately doesn't mean shit. Maybe 15 years from now, 8K will be the new marketing ploy, and it's a ploy, it's not real. Maybe then Folio will be the big deal. Hey, I love it that Sony didn't develop this. Okay, I love it that there's a new company who's taking optical media seriously, but where are they going to really make their money? Because they're not going to take on Sony. It'll be, frankly, because Sony will figure out some way to do this if they haven't already. Again, they already do have theoretical Blu-ray discs that can do 250 gigs. Okay, even though those aren't out there yet. You're not going to take on Sony. It's going to be like Sony versus JVC, right? Remember DVD HD versus Blu-ray? Who was going to win? Oh boy, I remember. Heritage Farms remembers. Or is it Pepperidge? No, it's Heritage. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The internet remembers. How about that? So, it's just going to end up being that bullshit. And frankly, you're going to lose against Sony. Why? Because they make the most popular players on the planet. What are those? PlayStations. You've already lost. So, that said, what is this about? This is about other companies. This is not about the entertainment industry at all. This is about long-term data storage. And to prove the point, what company out there do you think, and we've talked about this since we found it out years ago, what company do you think is the number one buyer of Blu-ray discs? It's going to be a company we're going to talk about during Listener's Choice. Facebook. Facebook is the single largest purchaser of Blu-ray discs. What, is Facebook an entertainment company? Well, they tried to do that. They failed. But, what are they doing with these Blu-ray discs? They are storing all of your back data, the years and years, if not over a decade of back data that they have about you and all of us and blah, blah, blah. They're storing it onto Blu-ray discs instead of keeping it on servers. Ever wonder sometimes when you say you want to collect data that you posted from 2011 or something like that, why they'll say to you, well, it could take a while for us to get it back. Or if you delete your account, then you come back. It's like, okay, your account will come back to its original form, but it could take up to a week or something like that. Why does it take that time? It takes that time because they're probably sending some asshats, into the basement at Facebook HQ, one hacker way, and saying, all right, you got to find the Blu-ray discs marked, Brian Sovryn or something like that, right? And I'm like, fuck. I mean, I'm sure they're keeping my data, but I am not on Facebook. But that's how this works. Okay, and so what is this 1 terabyte disc for? It's for that. It's to take the load off of server structures. Is that ultimately a good thing? It's got its purpose. It's got its uses. I wouldn't mind being able to buy these and essentially this is a far better storage solution than, buying a Western Digital MyBook or, some kind of C8 external hard drive, right? I have, I look to my right and there's actually, speaking of Western Digital, I have an 18 terabyte hard drive here. Now I love this thing. I have a NAS with so many fucking terabytes on it by Synology. But would I love, and do I often, take really important things and burn them onto a Blu-ray disc? In fact, particularly I use M-Disc, which are theoretically supposed to last 1,000 years, at least. Well, I guess we'll get our money back in 1,000 years to know if that's true, but I will go through that process, okay? Because again, it's far more reliable than any hard drive that you could look at, even though these hard drives are designed to run for at least 10 years, if not more. So I get what this is for. Just everybody's talking about it like, oh, fuck, we're going to have 8K, we're going to have this. Like, no, there's no market. There's no market for that. It doesn't matter even if you're demanding it. Guess what? The movie studios, they don't care. Yeah, Samsung might put out an 8K television, but that's just because they have to keep coming out. They have to keep pretending, and keyword pretending, that they innovate. Again, you are never, ever in your life, unless you are in the movie industry somehow, or maybe somehow you've got it, even on an iPhone. I don't think that it's, because what? The highest iPhone has, does it even have it? I think maybe the highest iPhone has 1 terabyte on there. How much genuine raw 4K footage do you think you're getting on there? No, it's fucking compression. It's compressed video. It's not really 4K. It's trickery. 4K, again, unless you're actually in the industry using the right equipment, and that equipment is fucking huge, you have never seen 4K content in your life, ever. You just haven't. It's a lie. Now, moving on. That story took way longer than I expected. We've got other shit to get into. Here's something that's not a lie. It's not the cake. The company that I use as my VPN service, that being Mulvad, Again, the main reason I've used them is they have a Windows 7 supported client, which, again, that really is the primary reason that I use them. But also, they've been great about implementing WireGuard very quickly, and they just do things right on just about every platform. They handle things well on Linux. They handle things well on Android. They handle things super well on like iOS or iPadOS or even macOS. So it's a company where I feel confident that I am going to get feature parity, or at least the features that I want, on just about any platform that I end up being on, and I end up being on a lot. Why? Because I'm a tech journalist, so it doesn't surprise. Anyway, Mulvad is going to the next level here, and I'm pleased to see this. In fact, a Sovereign Tech listener is the one that alerted me to this, but they announced on their blog the Tilitus key. The Tilitus key is effectively a YubiKey on steroids. It is a YubiKey that allows you to run multiple apps, and these multiple apps are actually all sandboxed from each other in the key because they never share the actual hash secret between each other. They can contrast the hash to know that it's the right device, but they never actually share the secret to where they can access each other. This is a problem that exists on other security keys of this type. And its ability to run multiple apps, like where you could effectively run multiple one-time PIN apps. I mean, there's a lot of different features that could be taken advantage of here. Very high-end security stuff. But I'm pleased to see it. It's certainly an evolution up from the YubiKey. Not that I have any problem with YubiKey. But what I really like about it, and I don't know that this is what inspired Mulvad, but I'm kind of hoping that it is, the FIDO Alliance, which handles a lot of the, basically the code that allows YubiKeys to, which I've recommended for years on Sovereign Tech, that, allows them to function and have a standard, as in like Web2Authn, that allows them to have a standard that can function with multiple websites and web browsers and everything else. The FIDO Alliance, who, finalizes all of that, they've basically started to walk away from hardware MFA, hardware multi-factor authentication. They are looking more in the direction, and I don't applaud this, and I am going to have a conversation in the future around, we'll get into passkeys, which Apple's talking about, a lot of other companies are talking about. If you can guess, I'm not bullish on these things. In fact, they're bullshit. But I want to have a bigger conversation around that. But I'm very concerned that, like, basically the FIDO Alliance, it sounds like they're thinking, okay, your smartphone will be your multi-factor authenticator. No, I don't want that, because in my perfect world, and hopefully in my near future, I don't want a smartphone. You understand? So, but I want multi-factor authentication, absolutely. I want the best security I can possibly get, and the largest amount of security layers that are possible. So the Tilitus key, Mulvad has not released it yet, but they've got stuff set up on GitHub already. I mean, this looks like the real deal, including that you can program security keys, or not security keys, but you could program secret keys, shall we say, on top of what already comes stock with the Tilitus key. I mean, there's some really, really slick features here. This is definitely, like I said, a YubiKey on steroids, totally. And I love it. I mean, I really, really love it. So something to keep an eye on. When that comes out, I'm going to try and get my hands on one, and certainly I'll put it through its paces, and I will report about it right here on Sovereign Tech. And just to round out the foreplay, I guess we got like 3 stories here, though it turned out to be 4. We're talking all about hardware, which I'm glad. It feels so rare to actually talk about hardware that is either exciting or at least interesting enough to bother talking about, because most hardware is like, oh, it's another fondle slab, boring. Oh, it's another computer, boring. Well, this computer's not so boring that we're going to talk about here. And last week on episode 491, we talked about how Google canceled its plans for the Pixelbook. Well, as soon as that announcement came out, or at least not long after, it was interesting that Framework, which is a company that makes upgradable and easily repairable and modifiable, not just upgradable, but modifiable, as in you could put different ports on it and everything, laptops. I do not have a Framework laptop. I'd love to try one out. I don't have one, however. but I applaud the concept overall. And they have announced that they are working with Google, like Google and Framework are working together. So this is about as close to like an official Google Chromebook as you can get right now, outside of the, the Pixelbook Go, which is 3-4 years old now. But Framework is going to come out with an upgradable Chromebook. It is expensive, but I don't think, everybody was kind of like, I don't know, they were sneezing a bit, or not sneezing, that's the wrong phrase. They were a little pissed off at the price tag because it starts at $1,000. But then those are the same people who are wanting a flagship Pixelbook. What do you think Google's going to charge for a flagship Pixelbook? Probably $1,000. So I don't understand why they're complaining about this. But anyway, so I liked what I saw here. Framework in general, again, you can get it with other operating systems. It doesn't have to be a Chromebook. In fact, admittedly, I'm not really sure why it would be a Chromebook. Ultimately, I think the idea here is, granted, it's powerful. In fact, let's talk about the specs, and then I'll get into the idea of it all. But it's going to have a 13.5-inch 3x2 display, so it has the taller screen, which Google digs, and that's at a 2256 by 1504 resolution. It also has a 12th gen, or at least it looks like it starts with a 12th gen Intel Core i5. So that's a fairly latest spec. 4 + 8 CPU cores. Anyway, 30 watts sustained performance. If you're a spec nerd with a Chromebook, I'll let you look into that. Link is in the show notes. But it's also, and this shows you how tightly they're working with Google, it is going to have the Titan C security chip, which is part of what allows for verified boot. Now, most Chrome OS devices will have that, unless you're going with Chrome OS Flex. But regardless, I mean, that's how tightly they're in with this. The same Titan security chip is the same thing that they put into, Pixel, like the Pixel 6 and up, as far as smartphones. So yeah, you're getting that verified boot. So this is something where, again, they are absolutely working with Google very tightly on this. What I think that this is really about, and like I said, what is it? 64 gig to 1 terabyte of storage can be put onto it. Great. 8 gig of RAM. I would hope they'd allow for that to get upgraded a bit. But we'll see. Anyway, really modern features on this. It would definitely be a powerful Chromebook. It's a Chromebook that's going to be able to run Steam on it. They actually expressly stated that. But the real play here, I think, this allows, because it is upgradable, even though they have not announced whether or not you can upgrade the motherboard on it. And no, it's not mainboard, it's motherboard, motherfucker. They have not announced if you can upgrade the motherboard on it, because it's supposed to get 8 years of updates, which is impressive. It's 8 years of official Chrome OS updates. And I would assume if you put a new motherboard on it, that would increase going forward. But I think really this is all about getting, every company right now is like, oh, by 2030 we'll be net zero carbon emissions or whatever. This is clearly an attempt to make that spreadsheet look good, because it is an upgradable, a laptop. That what buys them, I don't know, whatever carbon credits, not that that's exactly a thing, but I'm sure that buys them a few thousand carbon credits that will, again, look good on their spreadsheet and maybe help them achieve their goals by 2030. I think that's really what's going on here. And maybe that's part of the reason also that the Pixelbook that was being developed and was far along in development ended up getting canceled, because Google knew they were going to come out with this device. Again, it's a nice, Framework laptops are great. Like, I love that you can choose what ports you want on it. Do you want an Ethernet port? Do you want like 3 USB-Cs, or do you want 1 USB-C and 2 USB-As? What do you want on it? Like, that's all really cool. And I love the environmental aspect of being able to upgrade the damn thing instead of just chucking laptops every year or two. Not that I do that, but I know most people do, it seems. So, it's a nice move. But I think the real play here is some kind of meeting some kind of spreadsheet goal for, carbon neutrality. That's got to be what's going on here. Anyway, that's it for the Foreplay. If you are looking for a Chromebook, certainly this is probably I would say this is the best one on the market, next to like what Acer's doing with the Acer Vero, which is all made out of like ocean plastics and everything. I applaud that all the way. These are directions to look in. You've got options now instead of, the shitty stuff that's, well, not all of it's been shitty, but there's been a lot of shitty little laptops. And most people think Chromebooks need to be $200. They don't. Is your privacy get thrown out the window? Should you get a discount for it? Absolutely. But, if you want the security, the most secure operating system on the planet, which there's a good argument for it to be that, well, at least it's upgradable. Anyway, we'll be right back with more Sovryn Tech. Woo! Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Or are you just looking for a performance boost for your business's online presence? The answer is Agorist Hosting. Agorist Hosting is the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, even custom apps for your Shopify store, and more. All with security, reliability, redundancy, and privacy at the forefront. Oh, and those bleeding edge features? How about hosting your data in a decentralized system like IPFS, the Interplanetary File System? Good luck getting that from those other guys. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. Head over to agoristhosting.com to get started. That's AGORIST hosting.com. agoristhosting.com.
Story of the week.
Ooh, speaking of privacy. Well, if you thought, yeah, Stallion, I'm not going to buy a Chromebook. I don't care if it is made by Framework. I am not going to get all my data used for schlepping ads or have it uploaded to Google Drive where it can get handed over to the government, for whatever willy-nilly reason. And who knows? I mean, we talked about recently how a Google account got shut down, right? Because the parents of their young son were sending pictures to the doctor via, for telemedicine to, hey, there's this problem, near my child's, nether regions, and it got flagged as, child pornography when it wasn't that at all. And the police even proved that fact, and it got shut down. So maybe you're thinking, well, shit, I'm not going to give anything to Google. I'm not going to do a Chromebook. I'm not going to use Google Drive. I'm not going to back up my photos to Google Photos. I'm not doing any of that. I'm going to go to Apple. As if you're Katie Holmes, leaving Scientology and joining the Catholic Church. Woo, way to upgrade. You're going to go to Apple. Well, let's see what that would get you. Of course, it depends on what you are. But then, again, Google will just say, oh, not child pornography. Oh, you're done. Would Apple do the same thing? Well, granted, this is a bit of a different case, but I think the abstract point stands. And I actually have two stories I want to get in with you. And these are both from 9 to 5 Mac. These are both from within the month of September 2022, so incredibly fresh. I think they might actually both be by Ben Lovejoy, who's one of the main writers over there. I generally enjoy his work. And let's open up with the top one. And then I want to get into the other because here's what's going to happen. I'm going to share with you one story, and you're going to say, well, sure, that's a nation state actor, and it's the government asking for data, so of course they handed it over. But then, and so you're going to say, well, but just for me, little old me, whatever. Apple's not going to use their data against me. Apple's not like Google where they're in the ad business. Let me do what I do so well and destroy your illusions. Top story. Chinese spy convicted with help from iCloud backup of his iPhone. Reading from 9 to 5 Mac. A Chinese spy carrying out industrial espionage against GE Aviation and Honeywell's aerospace division. Who knew, right? You just bought that fan from Walmart that said Honeywell on it. And holy shit, no wonder why that looks like a jet engine. Anyway, from Honeywell's aerospace division. I don't know if they have a deal with Walmart, but anyway, was caught with the help of access to an iCloud backup of his iPhone. The data obtained include a never-before-seen copy of a security form used by the Chinese security service when recruiting spies. I'm not going to pronounce this name right, but Xu Yanjun, an officer in China's Ministry of State Security, the MSS, was arrested and brought to trial in the U.S. after investigators lured him out of the country to a meeting in Belgium, from where he was extradited to America. Bloomberg tells the story in dramatic form. Link is in the show notes for this, of course. But the executive summary is that China targeted academics and engineers working on aerospace projects. They were invited to China on all expenses paid trips where they were ostensibly delivered conference papers, but were really giving away commercially sensitive information on airframe and engine development. I'm going to skip down. You can read a lot of this stuff, but I want to skip ahead. The data was accessible because although iCloud backups are encrypted, they don't use end-to-end encryption. This means that Apple holds the key and can hand over data to law enforcement on receipt of a court order. So, Stallion breaking in. Let's make this abundantly clear, and I've given talks at conferences. I've brought this point up because I will ask the question when I give a talk. What is the company that you feel safest with your data? Most people will say Apple, and smart people, and I mean this, they're genuinely intelligent people, will often bring up, well, what about the San Bernardino case where Apple said to the FBI, fuck you, we can't give you this data. Okay, key phrasing. Sure, Apple might have said fuck you to the FBI, but they said it's because we can't give you this data. Not because they wouldn't be happy to bend over, grab the ankles, and let the FBI do what they need and give them what they want. It's because the way that the FBI handled the iPhone of the San Bernardino shooter those years ago, it destroyed the data. That's why Apple could not physically access it if they could, like in this case with this quote-unquote Chinese spy. If they could, just as they did here, they'd gladly hand it over. Apple has no problem handing over your data. They don't care. I mean, what are you thinking? So finally, hopefully, with this case, even though there are plenty others, we can put that argument to bed, that somehow Apple will say no to the government, because that's crap. But as I said earlier, okay, so, well, again, I mean, let's raise the flag here. So iCloud backups are not end-to-end encrypted. Got that? I have Apple devices. The first thing that I turn off, and I know it's just a soft switch, meaning I don't really know if this is going on, I instantly turn off all backups. Unless it's for like Pages, like Apple Pages, if I happen to be wanting to use that for some reason because it makes pretty EPUBs, I'll have that backup, but I'll be very, very particular. To be clear, I do the same fucking thing on my smartphone. If I want to back, or, on my Android phone, if I want to back shit up on my Pixel 6, I am connecting it directly to a hard drive, or at least to a computer that then is connected to a hard drive. I do not do cloud backups, even though I could with Synology, like with my NAS, I could certainly make that happen. And, well, I'd have to look into, I'm pretty sure their photo backup is end-to-end encrypted, or at least you can hit the checkbox on that. But that's the thing. I don't exactly know because I don't really bother. Okay. There's just no way that I am sending that stuff through in that fashion. At best bet, okay, maybe Telegram, it's okay to send photos, or like Signal, or Threema, one of these messaging apps like we were talking about last week in episode 491. Then you're getting some end-to-end encryption on the sharing of photos. But I have no illusion that Apple or any of the tech giants would somehow protect my fucking data. No way. So I hope you don't either. Now, but you could say, yeah, but Stallion, Apple, you see, here's the thing. How does Apple make its money? Apple makes its money with hardware sales. So they're not like Google or even Microsoft, who's certainly trying to match Google. They're not like Google or Microsoft or Facebook or those other companies where all the revenue comes from ads. Au contraire. Au contraire. Let's get into our next story, also from Ben Lovejoy. I mean, this headline, holy hell. Apple ad business growing fast. Company accused of U-turn and Machiavellian plot. Machiavellian plot. Let me just again, we don't have to spend a ton of time on this. Let me skip ahead because the facts speak for themselves. There's not need for a ton of commentary. It's a fact. Actually, here, I want to read from this subheader here. Background. Apple has never been anti-ads. Indeed, Steve Jobs saw in-app ads as a win-win for customers and developers alike by enabling money to be made from free apps. However, the ad business never used to be a significant one for Apple's own revenues. Back in Steve's day, Apple made just a few $100 million a year. Today, that figure is estimated to be $5 billion and growing fast. Recent signs have pointed to Apple wanting to accelerate the rate of growth. In July, that's 2022, we saw the company expanding App Store ads from search to the Today tab and more. In August, we learned that the Cupertino company now has a dedicated senior ad exec within the services division. Then a Bloomberg report suggested Apple was planning ads within Apple Books and Apple Podcasts. Holy shit, are you going to stop using Apple Podcasts? I hope. You got Pocket Casts there, and that's owned by another company, which, well, anyway, moving right along. You take your pick. There's plenty of great podcast apps. What is it, Overcast? Is that the big one on? Anyway, there's plenty of great ones even on Apple that aren't Apple Podcasts. Moving on. All of this comes after Apple made life tougher, and this is a key point, Stanley breaking in, made life tougher for third-party ad platforms by introducing ad tracking transparency. That made it harder for companies like Facebook and Google to get the data required to sell personalized ads, which are worth much more money than randomly placed ones. An antitrust investigation is already underway because while Apple requires third-party apps to ask permission for ad tracking, the company doesn't do this in its own apps. There's the key deal. I want to read more, but Stallion breaking in, end the quote right there, okay? This speaks to also maybe why, if you remember, was it episode 490, where we were talking about how VPNs were not blocking Apple's traffic from, Apple's main aspects of iOS, as well as Apple's own apps, that traffic was not going through the VPN until, if it even did, until hours later or more? Is this because Apple knows that it wants to be able to send personalized ads and it needs to see that traffic that the VPN is supposed to be hiding and protecting? That's supposition, sure. That's speculation, sure. But I think that, that's so highly likely as to why for years since they've known this problem with VPNs, they haven't done jack shit about it. And let's be clear here that most ad blockers on iOS, which I applaud them for having ad blockers available on there, most of those ad blockers are functioning in some form or fashion via the VPN service of iOS itself. Machiavellian? Oh, fuck yeah. Let's keep reading. Apple ad business hiring accelerates. The Financial Times reports that Apple has quadrupled its hiring rate between 2020 and today. Apple plans to nearly double the workforce in its fast-growing digital advertising business less than 18 months after it introduced sweeping privacy changes that hobbled its bigger rivals in the lucrative industry. The iPhone maker has about 250 people on its ad platform team, according to LinkedIn. According to Apple's careers website, it's looking to fill another 216 such roles, almost quadruple the 56 it was hiring in late 2020. Apple disputed the figures but declined to elaborate. This is the key point here. This is the second key point. Is there anything wrong with Apple wanting to get into the ad business? Ultimately not. In fact, like this doesn't shock me at all. I've even said in the past that, believe me, they're going to get into ads sooner or later. That money's just too good. And they have iOS, which is now, even in the United States, a larger platform than Android for the very first time, or for the first time in a very long time, in probably over 10 years. Why are you not going to schlep people ads on that? Are you kidding? Or inversely, get people to sign up the $10 a month for Apple News, right? To get rid of the ads. One way or the other, you're making money off the ads, whether it's by not showing people or it's by showing it to them. I mean, like Microsoft's been trying to crack the nut that Google has with ad services for a very long time. That's why nobody uses Bing. Yeah, but you don't understand. Microsoft they cannot shut down Bing. They can't. It's just too much of a gold mine for it to not be there. They've got to do it. That matters. That's why, and ever since Windows 10, you've had a specific ad ID, right? Microsoft wasn't into it either, but it's too rich. It's too attractive. They've got to go for that money. And I mean, look what Apple's already doing. $5 billion over just a few million? $5 billion. But look, whether it's okay for them to do it or not, let's just call it. It is fucking insidious that they gave Facebook a hard time. They gave so many companies a hard time on iOS, making them essentially have to rewrite their entire ad business to be able to even get like just a tenth of the money that they were getting before via iOS users. And then, to find out that, they're developing their own ad platform, in their own ad business. Yeah, I mean, that Machiavellian might be the right word here, folks. As to where before everybody's like, Apple's so fucking great. Good for them. They don't need the ad money. They don't. No. It wasn't that they didn't need the ad money. It's that they wanted it for themselves. They're not anti-ad. They're not pro-privacy. They want the gold. That's what it's all about. They want the oil. So the point here with both of these stories, I'm going to wrap this up. The point here, stop pretending that Apple is a pro-privacy company. Stop pretending that Apple is in any way better than Google, Microsoft, Facebook, Twitter, Samsung. Take your pick of the company. Stop confusing yourself on that. Stop lying to yourself about that if you think that. Now, I mean, if you're in Apple's ecosystem and you got shit to get done and you're using Apple products, hey, I get it. I have a Windows, granted it's Windows 7. I have a Windows machine in front of me. Like, I understand that we got to use what we use to get through the world that we're in and hopefully build that, proper future where we can have the technology only that we want instead of that we need to deal with the capitalist asshats around us. I'm all about getting to that, and I understand that you got to use some ugly shit sometimes to do it. But do not pretend that any of these companies give a rat's fucking ass about you. Ever. Or that they are going to protect you. Ever. They are not. I'll be back with more Sovryn Tech.
Science. Outer space. Psychology. Book and movie recommendations. Fiction from the Sovryn universe. Travels to points of mystery and the unexplained. And even spirituality? All of that can only mean one thing. The Sovryn Technica Newsletter! By me, Ellen Sovryn, along with some stuff by that crazy man I call my husband, Dr. Brian Sovryn. It's the latest tool in your self-directed education, the education that really matters. If you want to cut through the crap of mainstream media ass clowns, sign up for the Sovryn Technica newsletter right now at sovryn.substack.com. That's sovryn.substack.com. The Sovryn Technica newsletter. Welcome to the future.
Listener's choice.
Oh, and you say to me, Stallion, can you give me one more? You hit them all. You hit Google. You've been hitting Microsoft. You pummeled Apple. Can you give me one more? I'll give you one more. Let's go after Facebook, baby. Let's do this. The worst of the bunch, and I mean that. I mean, they're all fucking assholes. Just a gackle of slapnuts. But boy, if there was one that came up like a bobblehead, that you just wanted to play whack-a-mole with or something, it would be Mark Zuckerberg. And I wouldn't feel so bad about it because he's an android, not really human. But, I'm sorry, all of you robots out there. I didn't mean to insult you with that. I'm so sorry. Okay? You are not like Mark Zuckerberg. He is not like you. He is scum. And to prove the point, got a story from the New York Post here, and this is coming in. Of course, we're in listener's choice here, which means you get me the stories that you want me to talk about, and baby, I'll talk about them. You don't know what I'm going to say. Might agree with you, might not, but I'll talk about them. Here we go from the New York Post by Miranda Devine. Interesting name. Here we go. Facebook spied on private messages of Americans who questioned 2020 election. Well, if we look at the stats of that, Stallion breaking in, I mean, I think it was, even in 2020, wasn't it still like the largest majority just didn't vote? So did they spy on most Americans? Let's read it from New York Post. Facebook has been spying on the private messages and data of American users and reporting them to the FBI if they express anti-government or anti-authority sentiments or question the 2020 election, according to sources within the Department of Justice. I mean, it always kills me, Stallion breaking in. It always fucking kills me. Like, sometimes, I mean, it's rare these days, it seems, where I still end up, talking to, like, in person, or I end up talking to more libertarian types or whoever else. And, and they're like, oh yeah, well, I shared it on Facebook or whatever. And it's like, I mean, and I guess it's okay if you want to be, maybe you're kind of an exhibitionist or something, but like, do you just want to be on the list? Like, don't you want to even like try to not? I don't know. I mean, some of us, sure, we do podcasts where we're as anti-authoritarian as fuck. Like I said, I get called the most dangerous man alive often enough. But I don't get it. Anyway, okay, whatever. Use Facebook. Moving on. Schedule that meeting, baby. Schedule that anti-government rally on Facebook. Doing great. All right. Under the FBI collaboration operation, somebody at Facebook red flagged these supposedly subversive, somebody did it, subversive private messages over the past 19 months and transmitted them. Oh, I see. Stop. Stallion, relax. I used Facebook Messenger. Oh, it was a private message. Oh, you did so much better. They didn't read those. They wouldn't read those. Those don't get shared. Those don't get held up and used against you at all. Because they're private, right? I don't know what the fuck that word means anymore. Reading on. These supposedly subversive private messages over the... I do like that the New York Post said supposedly subversive, right? Because, again, questioning authority doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. As we always say, it's just supposed to be about questioning authority. And that's just something that human beings, I think, naturally do. We're all born anarchists and atheists, but... I guess some of us forget that. Actually, a lot of us do. Okay, reading on. Over the past 19 months and transmitted them, so these private messages on Facebook, past 19 months, transmitted them in redacted form to the Domestic Terrorism Operational Unit at FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. without a subpoena. Quote, it was done outside the legal process and without probable cause, end quote, alleged one of the sources who spoke on condition of anonymity. Imagine that. They actually got some anonymity. Wasn't on Facebook. Quote, Facebook provides the FBI with private conversations which are protected by the First Amendment without any subpoena, end quote. Now, Stallion breaking in. I want to break in right here. Real quick, because what has Facebook been saying for the past, we'll give them 5 years. Oh yeah, we care about privacy. I could probably play a whole montage. In fact, I will play an entire montage of Mark Zuckerberg talking about privacy. Let's do it.
Hey everyone, welcome to F8. Today, we're going to talk about building a privacy-focused social platform.
Mark Zuckerberg took the stage at Facebook's annual F8 developer conference earlier today. After a tumultuous year that involved all sorts of privacy issues and data leaks, the CEO outlined the steps the company is taking to make Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and its other services more private. But before that, the CEO had a few laughs about the company's recent privacy woes.
Now look, I get that a lot of people aren't sure that we're serious about this. I know that we don't exactly have the strongest reputation on privacy right now, to put it lightly.
Zuckerberg then launched into 6 principles the company is focusing on.
Private interactions, encryption, reducing permanence, safety, interoperability, and finally, secure data storage.
Some of the approaches the company is taking are enabling end-to-end encryption on its messaging platforms and building safety precautions into products before shipping them. Zuckerberg also emphasized the company won't store its data in countries where the data could be at risk.
Because you should expect that we're not going to store sensitive data in countries where it may be improperly accessed, either because there's weak rule of law or because a government might try to forcibly get access to your data. So over the next few years, we're going to build more of our services around these ideas.
One of the big announcements was a new redesign coming later this year. The new Facebook design will put an emphasis more on groups and communities, and Zuckerberg says plans are already in place to address misuse and misinformation.
And while we're recommending groups for people to join, we're very focused on making sure that our recommendations and discovery surfaces aren't highlighting groups where people are repeatedly sharing misinformation or harmful content, and we're working hard to completely remove groups if they exist primarily to violate our policies or do things that are dangerous. So that's just been a very big focus for us here.
As he finished speaking, Zuckerberg was upfront that it's still early in the company's new privacy-focused mission.
It's still early, but if we get this right, then using all of these services is going to be a fundamentally different experience a few years from now. Because we believe that for the future, people want a privacy-focused social platform.
Looks like he's come a long way from thinking people don't care about their privacy.
So if we work hard and deliver this vision that we've laid out today, then I'm going to be proud of the difference that we've made. So thank you all. I'm looking forward to doing this together, and have a great F8.
Hey, Nick.
Hey, Mark. Hope I'm not interrupting. You got a sec? Have you got Oppie with you?
I think Oppie's still in the virtual forest, but I always have time for you. What's going on?
Look, I just love the presentation so far. It's such visionary stuff. But as you mentioned early on, with all big technological advances, there are inevitably going to be all sorts of challenges and uncertainties. And I know you've talked about this a bit already, but people want to know how we're going to do all this in a responsible way, and especially that we play our part in helping to keep people safe and protect their privacy online.
Yeah, that's right. This is incredibly important.
The way I look at it is that in the past, the speed that new technologies emerged sometimes left policymakers and regulators playing catch-up. So on the one hand, companies get accused of charging ahead too quickly, and on the other, tech people feel that progress can't afford to wait for the slower pace of regulation. And I really think that it doesn't have to be the case this time round, because we have years until the metaverse we envision is fully realized. So this is the start of the journey, not the end.
Like I said earlier, interoperability, open standards, privacy, and safety need to be built into the metaverse from day one. And with all the novel technologies that are being developed, everyone who's building for the metaverse should be focused on building responsibly from the beginning. This is one of the lessons that I've internalized from the last 5 years. It's that you really want to emphasize these principles from the start. So at Connect last year, Boz outlined our responsible innovation principles, and the first one was never surprise people.
Right, and that means being transparent about how things work, what data is collected, and how that data is used over time. It also means giving people easy-to-use safety controls, as well as age guidance and parental controls for when youngsters are using these products.
And we're spending a lot of time talking with experts and getting perspectives from outside the company on what we're building, even before we build it. And this is about designing for safety and privacy and inclusion before the products even exist.
Ha! Ha! Oh, please. We care about your privacy as you're handing over data to the FBI without subpoena. You're just handing it over. No legal process at all. The FBI just says, hey, give us the data. And you just hand it over. And you care about privacy. Fuck you. Well, we're talking a lot about people lying to you in this episode. Man, this might be the biggest one yet. Let's read a little more of the story, shall we? These private messages then have been farmed out as quote-unquote leads to FBI field officers around the country, which subsequently requested subpoenas from the partner U.S. Attorney's Office in their district to officially obtain the private conversations that Facebook had already shown them. So, it's like after the fact, okay, all right, oh yeah, no, this one's good. All right, now let's go through the actual, legal process. Why? Why keep up the charade that somehow you serve the people? Why keep up the charade that somehow you're protecting the people? protecting the people means protecting their liberties, right? And I thought privacy was one of those in America. Again, I'm speaking from a conventional American standpoint. I don't believe in morality or the concept of rights. But, if we're going to play that game, they're playing the game because they'll go for the subpoenas after the fact, after they've already seen it. I mean, it's a fucking dog and pony show. Have any of you even watched the Jason Bourne movies lately? Maybe you need to go through that series again. Because if you think this shit's new, that this just happened in 2020, I've got a lesson for you. Let's make a new t-shirt. Robert Ludlum was right. How about that? Moving right along. Actually, no. Before we move on. No, you know what it should be? Casper Bowden was right. The late, great Casper Bowden, who we have brought up many times. Ex-Microsoft employee who became a fucking activist, hardcore activist, and proved the point that it was a law on the books in the United States that any company that runs server operations in the United States has to hand over the data on those servers upon request. We've already known that this was going on. He proved it. He got laughed out. He was called, whatever terrible names that Silicon Valley and even, I dare say, journalists wanted to call that guy, but he was right 20 years ago. Let's keep going. But when the targeted Facebook users were investigated, but when the targeted Facebook users were investigated by agents in a local FBI field office, sometimes using covert surveillance techniques, nothing criminal or violent turned up. Quote, "It was a waste of our time," end quote, said one source familiar with subpoena requests lodged during a 19-month frenzy by FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. to produce the caseload to match the Biden administration's rhetoric on domestic terrorism after the January 6, 2021 Capitol riot. So, there's that 19-month period. The Facebook users whose private communications Facebook had red flagged as domestic terrorism for the FBI were all, quote, conservative right-wing individuals, end quote. Quote, they were gun-toting, red-blooded Americans who were angry after the election and shooting off their mouths and talking about staging protests. There was nothing criminal, nothing about violence or massacring or assassinating anyone. As soon as a subpoena was requested, within an hour, Facebook sent back gigabytes of data and photos. It was ready to go. I bet they had the guy running really fast to go grab those Blu-rays. They were just waiting for that legal process so they could send it, end quote. So then Facebook's like, okay, look, we already showed you, but to make it official, could you get the official word? That way it looks good for the investors or whatever the fuck. But Facebook was just dying. Please let us send you this data. We can't wait to send you this data, Daddy. Facebook denied the allegations. Of course they did. In two contrasting statements sent 1 hour apart, Erica Sacken, a spokesperson at Facebook's parent company Meta, claimed Facebook's interactions with the FBI were designed to, quote, protect people from harm, end quote. I don't know about you, the only people I am aware of that are trying to harm me are actually all the alphabet soup organizations out there, including the ones that begin with F, C, N, and others. I don't have any Americans around me threatening me. The only people who are pointing guns at me, as far as I can tell, are my own government. So Facebook, do you want to protect us? Maybe don't hand over all that gigabytes of data. How do you protect yourself, though? There's more in the story. You can read it. Link is in the show notes. It's actually pretty lengthy. It's a very lengthy affair. And look, I don't even need to get into. Okay. Because part of what the New York Post gets into, because they're the fucking New York Post. Oh, well, they didn't flag any of the Antifa. They didn't flag Antifa. They only flagged the conservatives. Holy shit, they're coming after our guns. They're coming after America. They're coming after this. Facebook, blah, blah. We don't even have to get into that. All it takes, what happens to one group will eventually happen to the other. You just have to, make it acceptable to the right people long enough. So that whole thing, this is a conspiracy, this is a leftist conspiracy against the right or whatever. Look, man, if you're not living above that left-right bullshit, I don't care what Facebook's doing or who they're flagging. Because again, it's only a matter of time before they flag everyone. And ultimately, everybody is flagged. Ultimately, that gigabytes of data is always there. Sooner or later. What's the old statistic? Everybody engages in what, 2 felonies a day? Or at least 2 misdemeanors? Breaks 2 laws a day? But anyway, if you're not living above all of that, look, you're all targeted. You're all targeted. The best thing that you can do is just, in fact, the Sovereign Tech listener that shared this with me had it right on the money. Just delete your fucking social media account. Like, that's it. You know, and I hope you have no, you also have no illusions with Facebook or with anybody, you know, like that this idea, oh, I send private messages so that can't get used against me in court. Oh no, they're just waiting to use it against you in court. They can't wait. There's no privacy to be had there. I'm in awe. I'm really in awe that people are still using this platform. This one above all others. I mean, Twitter's no better. Like, don't count on Twitter. I mean, we know their security model is one of the worst in fucking history. Okay. That's a story we'll get into in the future because it's important to talk about, considering just how important it seems that Twitter has become to the conversation around the globe. But man, get away from this company. This is the one company. And look, you can say, well, yeah, but grandma's on there and she's not going to get off of there. Holy shit. Are you really, you can't, like, explain this to grandma. Okay? I loved my grandma. Loved her. And boy, would I make the case with her. If at that time this sort of thing existed, I would have said, grandma, like, you got to trust me and you got to delete this. This has got to go. Like, this is stuff that should be talked about. And I'm pretty sure and granted, my grandmother was a smarter woman, or a smarter person, and nothing to do with being a woman, a smarter person than most. Okay. And I know she would have gotten it, but it's time to really convince grandma and make the fucking case. And I don't care what you've got to do. We talked about it last week. Get grandma onto Telegram or Signal or whatever. Trust me, she can figure it out if she can figure out Facebook. Okay. This is enough. I don't care about it. You got to stop caring about the network effect. You got to stop caring about what's like, well, it's inertia and whatever. Yeah, there's times where that can be so. But now we're talking about data getting sent off with no legal recourse. Ultimately, we've got data getting sent off just willy-nilly. And this is a company that it's proven that they are just dying to hand it over. They can't wait to hand it over. When your data's on the line and when a company wants to play fast and loose with your data, just like I said with Microsoft, when Microsoft with Windows 10, when that data was just getting deleted and gone off the operating system from Windows 10. There's a reason I'm using Windows 7, folks. When that happened, that company no longer gets your business. I no longer pay money for a Microsoft 365 account. I don't pay money for any of that bullshit because they're not getting my money. Because when a company plays fast and loose with your data, it's over. Right then, you say, stop. Get off this fucking platform. Be right back with more Sovereign Tech. Maybe we'll have some fun after this. Hey, baby, I know. You are tired of Gmail. You have had enough. Well, I have a solution for you. What I want you to do is you go to Fastmail, okay? It's fastmail.sovereigntech.com. That's the URL you can use. You're going to get a discount with that. You are going to love this. This is email for email's sake. This company does nothing more. Just email, and they do it right. All the latest security technologies. You want to log into your account with your YubiKey? You can do that. Fastmail has your hookup. Very inexpensive plans. I want you to check it out. You go to fastmail.sovereigntech.com. That'll get you the hookup, and it's an honor to have them as a part of Sovereign Tech. Woo! Let's get back to the show.
Shall we play a game?
All of that was to say nothing. We're going to talk about games. We're going to try and have some fun. But all of that is to say nothing of the points that I brought up over and over again, that, Facebook was a company that was literally engaging in non-consensual behavioral experiments. Behavioral experiments that potentially, and I would argue did, lead to suicides. Led to the death of people. Behavioral experiments. That is a fact. And that was a long time ago. And I just don't see them being any better a steward of, data that gets presented to me and data that I give them. Not that, fortunately, I don't. I've been off of Facebook forever, thankfully, or at least for a very, very, very long time. So, the hard part is with these companies, though, and let's admit this, these companies are so fucking huge. Like, it's, the conglomeratization of the bulk of the world, not just America. It's almost impossible to get out from under the thumb of companies that do something fucking heinous to you. To say nothing of the government money heat map. I mean, there's just government money everywhere. So even when you're anti-government, I mean, all you can do is, you're just going to have to run to the woods. And even then, good luck. So I get that. And it's a challenge, right? Because, when I say, like, I'm not going to give Microsoft my money anymore, but then you might be really into Halo, right? And you might really be into Xbox. I mean, the thing is, like, these companies are so fucking massive, bigger than any other, than most of our understanding of economics, previous understanding of economics over the past 100 years would allow. Like, we could barely imagine companies getting to this size. And I'm not even saying that companies with these kinds of near monopolistic power or monopsonistic, like, are there good things that can come out of that? That is a very complicated, very nuanced conversation to have. And it's one that I will have. In fact, I know I'm going to talk about it, some of it on the upcoming Wednesday Q&A on Patreon, patreon.com/sovereigntech for that. But, I want to be clear on that it can be very hard. You say, like, okay, I'm going to avoid this company, when in some ways it's almost impossible. I do think you can kind of get away with not giving them money, or at least severely decreasing the amount of money you give them. But anyway, I will empathize with that, and that's a conversation that has to be had somewhat going forward. But that's the point with Facebook. There is no argument. There is no fucking reason to be on Facebook or anything that Meta produces. Instagram, WhatsApp, whatever. I know in parts of the world WhatsApp is very difficult to get around with, and so maybe that's a little bit different. But again, they didn't. That's the other problem too. They didn't even create, like, YouTube. Google didn't create YouTube, but now YouTube is Google, even though arguably it's under Alphabet and it's supposedly a separate company. Yeah, right. It's complex, but just lessen your exposure as much as you can with these things. Now, why am I saying this when we're going into game talk? Because I want to talk about a new device that I think is very much a sign of the times. And speaking of things getting at scales that we could never have imagined, I mean, if you talk to me in the 90s and, if you said, hey, in the future, there are actually going to be multiple types of gamers, meaning there would be like entire different communities of gamers and different styles of gaming, I would have said you were nuts, right? Because the person who plays Final Fantasy is the same person who plays Pokemon. The person who plays Pokemon is the same person who plays Warcraft 3. There was just, you were a gamer, you gamed everywhere and anywhere. In 2022, and really this has been going on for a few years, but in 2022, that is no longer true. There are now gamers who play entirely in the cloud. And then there are gamers who play entirely as if it was still 1995. And Satan bless them. I'm with you. Okay, and it's going to splinter even more from that. There are gamers who are technically gamers that only ever play little penny ante money-sucking games, endlessly money-sucking games on their mobile device, whether it's Apple or Android. So there's a lot of different types of gamers now. Again, that would have been unheard of for me, even like 20 years ago. I would have been like, no, there's no way. Like, yeah, okay, there's people who like, GameCube more than they like PS2, but we're all basically gamers here, and that's not true anymore. So a device that is really a sign of the times, I think, is Logitech's what they call the G Cloud. And this is a full-on device that is coming to stores near you. Certainly a competitor of sorts. It looks a lot like the Nintendo Switch. Let's be clear that Nintendo really fucking innovated with that. It looks a lot like the Nintendo Switch. Looks a bit like, the Steam Deck, which of course copied the Nintendo Switch. But anyway, the difference here is that the concept behind this device, it's Android based. Okay, so it's effectively a little Android tablet with controllers on each side of it. with 12-hour battery life, which not bad. It's meant to only run cloud services. The best data I could find, and it took me a while to find a story that would tell me what this was, I was looking for what's the onboard storage, because I don't believe it has a micro SD card slot as far as I could tell. Again, we're still getting some details on this thing, even though I think it's launching in October of 2022. But the best I could find was that it has 64 gig of onboard storage. Now that's enough to put like Xbox Game Pass, GeForce Now, or maybe Stadia or whatever on there, a cloud service platform. And that's all that this device is supposed to do. This is a device not meant to play games locally. It is meant to install the app that gives you access to the cloud gaming services like the ones I mentioned and more. Okay, I imagine Amazon's Luna would be on there as well. And, as long as you got a strong Wi-Fi connection, which is really what you need with that, like no 5G connection is going to give you the speeds you need to play these games efficaciously. The AAA games anyway. And away you go, and you're off to the races playing. Again, the stats overall, I don't think are that big of a deal. The onboard storage one mattered because it is ultimately just an Android tablet. So I didn't understand why it couldn't ultimately play, like you could go to the Play Store, go to the Google Play Store and download Knights of the Old Republic, or something along those lines and play it on the device. Well, that is fairly limited storage, but that's why I wanted to know about that. But it's a 7-inch touchscreen. It has 1080p. It does, it has a 60 hertz refresh. And it should be able to handle most of, like with GeForce Now, that would put you in like the 3080 tier on that. It will have Android 11, which that's good. You're getting into a little bit more advanced security with that. But again, if you're putting a limited amount of apps on here, that might not be so much of an issue. But 4 gig of RAM, it does actually, I just saw this in this story, in the specific one I pulled up from 9to5 Google. They do say it comes with a micro SD card. So this could be used for Android gaming in general, which actually makes it a little more attractive because an Android device is a phenomenal retro gaming device. Meaning you could play, especially with what this is a Snapdragon 720G. That could easily, that's kind of a mid-tier processor, but that could easily play like Redream. So you could do Dreamcast games on here. You could put RetroArch on there or Lemoroid, and you're going to play everything from, the original NES to the PlayStation 1. This could be a really great retro gaming device, but here's the problem with it overall. I don't mind the idea, and there are people, again, who are very much into cloud gaming, and there is some attractiveness to the proposition of cloud gaming in general. It has its problems as well, make no mistake. I'm not fully supportive of it, even though I get why some people would pay for like an Ultimate Game Pass for Xbox. $15 a month and play all those AAA games. You got a great Wi-Fi connection. I totally understand where people would be coming from a price point. But this thing is $350. And I think that is getting into, if it was $200, I think you'd have a winner here. That is not the price point you want to be at for what is ultimately an Android phone or, an Android tablet. Like you're better off just buying an Android tablet and getting like an 8BitDo Pro 2 controller that'll give you a lot more options as far as remappable buttons, I'm sure, though maybe they're going to have that within the software with this. We won't know really until it comes out. But that price point's just too much because you can get a Switch Lite refurb for under $200, and you're going to be able to play all those Nintendo games. You're going to get access to a very impressive retro gaming library, many of which are not available, on any of these cloud streaming services. And you're sure as fuck not getting Nintendo's catalog there, not their new one, especially. I don't see this as a Switch killer by any means. It's really, you're on this because you are totally dedicated to cloud gaming or maybe Android gaming in general. That's got to be the mindset. But I still think your better option is getting an 8BitDo Pro 2 controller and then just using your smartphone. Like the specs here just aren't enough to get me like that excited. I agree that this is a market that wants to get served. I just think this is failing, not on the hardware itself, but on the price point. It's way off. And to some degree, it doesn't exactly make sense. Like this is a case where having two separate devices, a gaming device and your smartphone, doesn't exactly make sense to me. But there might be people out there. I mean, this will probably go down in price to $250 in a heartbeat, and then it becomes a lot more interesting. So I get it. There's a market to be served here, but ultimately, you missed the mark on it. Like you really did. And I have a hard time believing Logitech is going to give it the same support that, say, like NVIDIA has given to Shield TV. Which, the NVIDIA Shield was kind of the proof positive that this kind of people were looking for this sort of thing. Part of me, okay, now that I say that, part of me actually hopes this does really well and NVIDIA makes another NVIDIA Shield where like the device is built into the controller itself and it's like a flip up screen. I love that form factor. Even though this isn't a bad form factor, I really, really like what NVIDIA was doing years ago. Anyway, let's wrap this up, and we'll be right back with some more Sovryn, some more fun stuff. I'll be right back with more.
Journey into the far reaches of aquaspace.
Attention, security brief.
Brace for impact. Seal outer doors, rig for collision.
Launch countermeasures.
From Steven Spielberg's Amblin Entertainment Inc. and Universal Television comes a journey into the future and beneath the sea. Roy Scheider stars in Sequest DSV.
You can watch Sequest by downloading it from your favorite torrent site or getting it on Glorious DVD. For beneath the surface lies the future.
Come on!
Album of the week.
Oh man, when I say fun stuff, boy, I am not kidding about right here. This is album of the year, folks, and I don't think anything could come in and change it. Like this is flat out album of 2022. It blows everything else right out of the water. In fact, Mrs. Sovryn and I, we were coming back from dinner and a movie, and I said, love, I was like, look, can I play some music for you on the drive home? Can I play some music for you? This is just going to blow your mind. And she's like, yeah, sure. We love music. So I popped it on. And it's not going to be a surprise to most, but it's a metal pick. Anyway, the band is Victorius. Now it's Victorius. Of course, it's in the show notes as well for you to find. This is a band that's been around for a little while. In previous albums of the week, I have talked about them. I particularly brought up their 2020 release, which was called Space Ninjas from Hell. Now, that title alone is brilliant. Didn't even have to be great music. Like, you got me listening when you've titled your album Space Ninjas from Hell, right? But then I put it on, and they're basically an even cheesier version of Dragon Force. But not only that, you can actually understand their lyrics, which is pretty key compared to Dragon Force. As much as I love Dragon Force, okay? And I really do. I reviewed the concert that Ellen and I went to for them. They are just as amazing live as they are on album, and I mean that. Like they're just frantic, intense, incredible. In fact, I've often called Dragon Force the epitome of like music. Like this is as high as you can get. This is as far as you can go with metal. And like that's the peak and that's the end of it. Well, let me tell you about Victorius's album titled from 2022, Dinosaur Warfare Part 2, The Great Ninja War. Now, I thought Space Ninjas from Hell was a great fucking title for an album. I mean, I had to change my underwear. You understand? This baby opens up with Saurus Invictus Lazarus is the little opener. Just exciting, sounds, a little bit of an epic score coming in for about 1 minute and 16 seconds. Laser sounds in the background. You're hearing mammoths. You're hearing dinosaurs roaring. It's really quite impressive. And then it gets into track 2 of Victorious Dino Gods. And this is where, to quote Gladiator, this is where you unleash hell. And it just keeps going and going. And it's so intense. And you can understand the lyrics. The singing's actually really good. The speed of the guitars is insane. There are lasers blasting everywhere. And then about 2 minutes in of this 4 minute and 46 second opus, it slows right down, and you get a speech for the dinosaurs to rise once again and defend the people of Earth. Maybe against Facebook, I don't know. But that's what it says. And then that speech ends, and it opens right up into guitars. And what are these guitars? What are these sirens of awesomeness? Playing a sped-up metal version of the Jurassic Park theme. 3 minutes into this song. And I go to tears when I hear it. The whole thing. And it is so fucking white hot. And then the song ends. And you don't know what happened to your pants. You don't know where your shoes are. You don't know how you ended up in a whole other state while you were driving. Because after that comes Mighty Magic Mammoth. Another 4-minute opus. And even when that's done, you go to a song, I mean, because you're thinking, like, oh, this can't get better. I just got done with Mighty Magic Mammoth. But then Jurassic Jet Fighters comes on. There's bombs dropping. There's lasers everywhere. And just a chorus that sounds like something that dropped out of Asgard. This is one of the most amazing albums you're ever going to hear in your life. And I mean that. This band, I thought that as high as you could go was Dragon Force, right? That's what I was telling you earlier. I thought that's as high as you can go. That's the epitome of metal music. Oh, no. No, because while Dragon Force, well, I don't mind their lyrical content at all, sounds like the soundtrack to Lord of the Rings. Oh, no, baby. When you start bringing in dinosaurs and fucking laser beams, when we've gotten to the point, like, you should be listening to this and you should be laughing your ass off, right? Because it's so fucking corny. The problem is, it's so awesome at the same time. It's so sincere that it just takes on like a whole other level. You've come full circle. It's not funny anymore. Now it's a fucking rallying cry for the most amazing things to appear in your life. And that's Victorius. They might be the greatest band ever. And just to make things sweeter, don't worry. You know, when this hour of just sonic destruction gets done with your body, you've got another 5-6 albums to listen to by them. And you're in for a great time. I'll be right back with more Sovryn Tech. Woo, fucking woo.
From Big Finish Productions, Blake 7, The Classic Audio Adventures.
I'm taking Liberator in on manual. We'll be in teleport range in 2 minutes.
What the hell was that?
Information. Liberator has been attacked.
You don't say.
Put up the force wall.
Confirm.
Message to all ground commanders. Initiate the final phase. Let's crush these rebels once and for all.
My name is Avon. Kerr Avon.
Kerr Avon.
Our hostage arrives, which may be unnecessary.
As a hostage, it's nice to be superfluous.
You can go to Blake7.com to find more of the new adventures of one of science fiction's greatest masterpieces, Blake 7, at Blake7.com.
The Ancient and the Strange.
And that, my friends, is why I am the greatest podcaster alive, baby. Woo! I'm not kidding. I know I might have been a little verbose in my review of Dinosaur Warfare Part 2. Man, just saying that name gets you excited. But no, it's really every inch as good as I said it was. And so am I. In fact, to prove it, no. All right, I'm going to stop with the bravado. It is time for The Ancient and the Strange. And as I have been doing the past couple episodes, I am going to do once again. Again, I'm not going to do this for every Ancient and the Strange, and eventually we're going to get into the subjects that I want to get into, but I want to get this conversation around spirituality. Like, I want this down and in your ears. Now, you can sign up for the Sovryn Technica newsletter. You heard the ad for it earlier, sovryn.substack.com, okay? You get your hookup. You can get the free version, and the spirituality section's in the free version. You can read it if you want, but there was so much demand for an audio version, and I think that it fits so well with teeing up for a lot of the subjects we're going to get into in the Ancient and the Strange. And not only that, but eventually some of this conversation about spirituality has to bleed into the conversation around technology. Because you heard it all earlier. I don't have to rehash that. But some of the answers are going to come from much of what we're talking about in this segment, and particularly what I've been talking about in the spirituality section in the Sovryn Technica newsletter itself. So what I'm going to do here, as I've done in the past couple episodes, is read from issue 3. Last 2 episodes were issue 1 and issue 2 respectively. Now I'm going to read from issue number 3, the spirituality segment. And when we got to issue number 3, Ellen's like, hey, we should give these things titles. And I was like, yeah, you're right. We should give these segments like titles, not just like the spirituality segment, but like give the write-up a title, give it a headline. And this one was Spirituality, Morality, Authoritarianism, and You. And I think this actually fits in very well with much of what we've been talking about throughout this episode, especially in the first half of it, about, authoritarianism and anti-authoritarianism. And I think spirituality is actually a really major part of that. I'll just let myself get into it. Here we go from issue number 3, the spirituality segment. Spirituality, Morality, Authoritarianism, and You. Morality doesn't exist. I could stop writing this whole section right there. It's lesson enough, and you need to deal with it. Please feel free to show me a shred of scientific evidence. Pick any tool you want. You could even measure to the Planck scale, and I guarantee you won't find any atom or molecule that comprises a thing called morality. You can't measure it. That means you can't quantify it. That means, for all intents and purposes of what proves that something exists, morality does not. But, Dr. Sovryn, you ask, by that logic, can you actually measure the aspects of spirituality that you discuss? Yes. Yes, you can. We will get to that in a future segment. While there is an argument to be made from biological liberties that could create a certain kind of shared ethics between humans based on their natural biological capacity for things like empathy, that's a subject to explore another time and not in the spirituality section, or at least I don't necessarily see it as a fit. I make the statement morality doesn't exist to make it clear that what I'm about to say is not a moral argument, and also that you have no moral obligation to not do what I'm about to discuss. I'll say it straight here in the early goings. In the fictional legal frameworks that surround us, take advantage of spirituality. Use it against the state. What are you saying, Dr. Sovryn? That I should make religious/spiritual arguments against laws that infringe upon my personal liberties? Yep. And do it hard and often. Last time in the spirituality section, I discussed recording your spiritual experiences and the truths you discover about yourself and the universe in your spirituality, be it as a book or a podcast or whatever. While that has inherent value with no need for any other reasoning, I'm going to give you another reason. You can point to it when your employer, the state, or anyone else tries to slam the hammer of domination on your head. And just to double down, go ahead, get that religious exemption from your rabbi to get out of whatever you're required to take. Whether you believe in the religious organization you are appealing to or not, just do it. I mean, if you actually do believe it, hey, kudos for getting to stay honest. Frankly, even just a couple of years ago, I would have never said or recommended anything like this. And I know that what I'm saying here isn't new or revolutionary. Well, it might be revolutionary in one definition of that term. But since 2020, I've come to appreciate the special privilege that religion has in our civilization. Years ago on Sovryn Tech, I used to claim that religion is far more dangerous than the government. My argument was that with religion, you could, quote, rationalize the irrational, end quote, leading to dangerous consequences. This is still true, which is why I focus on spirituality, not religion. And not only that, but religion is something higher, as it were, than the government itself, an idea generally sanctioned by the religion's holy texts and even the government itself. And it's that second part of the equation that is religion's special privilege. It is widely accepted as greater than the government and supersedes government diktats. Am I being pragmatic here? Sure. Do I like making recommendations like this? Not at all. However, at the same time, I genuinely believe, and might even be able to prove, spiritual arguments against authoritarian abominations like laws, taxes, borders, and cultural mores. Can logical, rational arguments be made against these same abominations? Of course. But logic and reason don't have the superpower that spirituality has. Conventionally accepted primacy over the state. So if you believe in your brand of spirituality, great. If you don't, that's fine. If you have a moral qualm with taking advantage of religious exemptions, as I argued in the beginning, you don't have to have one. But either way, use it. And that is from issue 3 of the Sovryn Technica newsletter. You know, it's one of the most important statements that I really wish somebody told me when I was a lot younger. And that is, there are no rules. I mean, just ultimately, there aren't. And certainly, you get some messages of that within what we call civilization. But no one ever really says it outright. And much of my argument there around spirituality and authoritarianism is certainly an argument from that point of there are no rules, and it needs to be said outright. Like I said, I know I'm not necessarily saying anything original there, but we never hear it directly enough. And that's ultimately my point and why I wanted to get that out there. If you don't want to believe this stuff, you don't have to believe it. But can you use it? In the year 2022, like I said, yes, I think you can. And I think it's necessary, even. So, we will be right back with some more Sovryn Tech. Going to wrap it up in the climax. Dr. Brian Sovryn, back with more. Woo!
The most incredible television event ever, as you join the crew of Battlestar Galactica.
Right here, you creepy crawly. I have led the entire human race to ruin.
The last of mankind, fighting for life in a hostile galaxy.
Most of us are dead.
Alone, with only one hope, Battlestar Galactica and her crew.
There is no other destination.
Commander Adama, Captain Apollo, the intrepid Starbuck, and the dazzling Athena, searching for a new and peaceful world.
May as well live for today. We might not have many left. Let the attack begin.
A new age of high adventure, Battlestar Galactica.
The Golden Stallion doing whatever he wants to do. The climax.
It is time for the climax, where I get to talk about whatever the hell I want to talk about. And we've been doing a lot of movies lately in the climax. And this is one I want to get in here. I want to get into the public because especially now, again, as we are in 2022, I think a lot of people might have missed this movie. And I know my audience has a pretty varying age range. I mean, actually, I know 10 years ago when I started, there were listeners who were in high school. Obviously, they're not in high school anymore. Also, not sure that they're still listeners. Probably, maybe are. Some of them reached out to me, actually, and I know they are. But anyway, you know, that's the thing with podcasts and with shows that run this long. You know, you bring in new generations all the time. And there are generations that have passed that sadly I think have been forgotten, including generations in Hollywood, which have clearly been forgotten, much to our detriment. And a movie that I want to bring up to you that I think everybody should watch, unless you're maybe one of those conservatives that Facebook was watching out for. Even though it would still speak to you, it's just not going to play well with your conservative sensibilities. And that movie is from 1993. Called simply Sliver. That's the title of the film, Sliver. It was a controversial film at the time, partly because, well, I mean, the actors involved, you had Billy Baldwin, one of the uglier Baldwin boys, but, you know, I guess he's better with a gun. Ooh, ouch. Okay. And Sharon Stone, and Tom Berenger, Tom Berenger's just a tremendous actor. And including in this film. Like, this is a film with lots of shocks and surprises. It is a modern day, for 1993, it is a modern day thriller based off of a novel by one of the greatest writers, I think, in history, that being Ira Levin, who is a author that I got introduced to thanks to Mrs. Sovryn, who got me into a book that I did a full review of years ago, that being This Perfect Day, which, interestingly, even though it's like a dystopian science fiction book, has very similar warnings to what's in the movie Sliver. You know, what happens when everything ends up on servers? What happens when everything, you know, gets under the purview and control of, well, anyway, go check it out. If you have not read, let's just put it that way. If you have not read This Perfect Day, go for it. And then if you want to, either watch the movie of Sliver or read the book. The movie was controversial, not so much because of what it was saying about privacy and what could be done with cameras and computers and everything else. We'll talk about that a little bit, but really it was more controversial because somehow this baby, you know, escaped an X rating. Very, very erotic, very sexually charged film, which of course Sharon Stone was very much known for at the time with Basic Instinct and other films. But that's not what makes this movie great. Is it the soundtrack that has a lot of Enigma, as in the band Enigma, in it? Yeah, that's a big part of what makes the movie great. Really, the soundtrack's fucking amazing. But no, this is a movie that I think is actually, it plays even better today than it did in 1993, and I'll explain why. So the plot is effectively a woman played by Sharon Stone. She's like an editor, a book editor. She ends up getting a new place in a building. That's where the title Sliver comes from. It's the name of the building, that like this apartment building that she lives in New York City. And she starts to find out that there are strange goings on and murders and whatever else that happened in this building. And, you know, so it's a thriller and things build up, you know, from there. But, you know, and spoiler alerts, it's only been out since 1993. And really, as I always say, you know, spoiler alerts are bullshit anyway, because you still have to see it happen in the movie. I don't know why people are so worried about spoilers, but that's besides the point. So what you find out is the guy, a young guy played by Billy Baldwin, who owns the building, like has the entire building like just laced with cameras everywhere and bathrooms and everything. And from his 13th floor apartment, he can see and hear everything that's going on within this building. He watches people masturbate, have sex, and, you know, all that jazz. Okay. So here's the thing. What's the amazing twist in this is that like Sharon Stone ends up kind of falling in love with Billy Baldwin's character who runs the building. And he eventually tells her that he's doing this and shows her the cameras, the whole thing. Now, what's really shocking in the movie, and part of what I think makes it great, is because it defies expectations. Because normally you'd expect the person to be disgusted. Well, you find out that Sharon Stone's character originally ran like a you know, kind of more of like a tabloid column, like a busybody column. And instead of running away in disgust when she sees these cameras, she sits down and starts watching them 4 days. And she doesn't and she just rolls with it. And she even has sex with the guy after the fact, which, you know, again, normally you'd expect her again to walk away in disgust and whatever, but that's not how this goes down. And so that's shocking and an amazing twist in and of itself. But it speaks to, you know, now the ending becomes what it is, and there's a twist there, and I don't want to give that away, but that doesn't matter to the point of why I think you should watch this movie. The reason that it's better today, well, here was the problem with it in 1993. I don't think people believed that what was going on in this movie was possible. Just like perhaps part of the reason that, see, Ira Levin is a blockbuster author who wrote the original novel that this movie is based off of. It's interesting that like the only novel, I mean, even something like Rosemary's Baby, which he wrote, was made into, you know, a very famous movie, and well-regarded one at that. But for some reason, This Perfect Day has never been turned into a movie. And I've been baffled for years as to why. And I think part of it comes down to is that nobody could really believe that what happens in this perfect day would happen. And I think somebody thought that, okay, what's happening in Sliver is totally possible. But most people didn't talk about this movie in the way that I'm talking about it right now, with the concerns around privacy implications and all of this. And I think part of it comes down to that for people in 1993, what this movie shows off was probably at the time considered impossible. Like, no, there's no way that that happens or whatever. And also that nobody was even having the conversation really around what happens if there were cameras like everywhere. You know, would most people just actually sit down and watch it instead of like really be disgusted by it? This is just a movie ahead of its time because it starts to play off of, and this is the genius of Ira Levin, right? Because ultimately it's his story. The movie like starts to play off of the idea that Sharon Stone and Billy Baldwin's character are like, we could actually do good with this. And in fact, they do. They stop a father-in-law from, you know, essentially like either raping or abusing his daughter-in-law. You know, because they scare him to death because it says like, yeah, we know what you're doing and, you know, you're going to stop this now or we're going to get the police in and whatever. And like, there's a point where Billy Baldwin's character even says, oh, we should put cameras all over town. And he's like this young, wealthy guy. So, you know, the insinuation is that he could probably do it. But it starts to play on that idea of like, wait a minute, but you could do good if you lived in a surveillance society. But then where does this go? How, you know, like how bad does this get? And it kind of culminates in Sharon Stone, like having a moment in an elevator, seeing two people where she knows the quote unquote evil that they're doing. And, you know, and like she has to deal with that knowledge, but she feels like she can't actually take action on it and, you know, correct the problem or whatever. And it raises some really interesting questions that we have today. For example, ones that we've brought up over the years on Sovereign Tech, like when the CEO of Ford said, we know when every crime is being committed in the United States because of all the data and metadata they collect from their vehicles now. Now, he was being a little hyperbolic in that, but he had to retract that statement because he really let the cat out of the bag. But that raises a huge question. So what? So you know who did what as far as, I don't know, a bank robbery or a murder or a rape case or whatever. And this speaks to what we were just talking about earlier with, you know, Facebook and whatever else. They've got to know nasty shit that's going on. And they're watching. They have people watching. That's why they were ready to hand over the data on all the people that they flagged. And yet none of these people do anything about it. They could stop this child abuse. They could stop this rape. They could stop, you know, this whatever crime you happen to think is happening or that is happening. And they don't. And this puts our entire society today, which is a surveillance society, not just a surveillance state, it's a surveillance society. This puts us all in a very precarious situation. When you know all of this stuff that's going on, and yet you do nothing. And it begs the question, and I don't think it's unfair to put it this way. Like Billy Baldwin's character is a fucking psychopath or sociopath, take your pick. Who are these psychopaths that are running these companies that have all of this knowledge? Because they must be. They must be. If they know the shit that's going on and they do nothing, how many Amazon Alexas do you need to know, you know, when terrible cases are going on? I'm not arguing them to do anything. I'm actually arguing for them to not collect the data. Okay. Again, this is a very precarious situation that we're in here. But let us be clear. Like if I was in charge of Facebook, I would have to shut it down because my heart couldn't take it. You understand? Like I would have, not that I have a hero complex, but I'm going to put it in this way. I would have like a Superman complex about it. I would want to save everyone that I could, but I couldn't. What kind of people does that create? Sliver, the movie, I think, asks these questions really well and at least starts to toy with them and makes you think about it, even in the simpler forms that it explores with cameras in a apartment building. So I consider this for Sovryn Tech's audience. You know, if you're pro-privacy and, you know, even just in the tech world in general, this is an essential watch. And maybe even read the book, because I'm sure it goes into things much deeper than the movie did. But I think this is an absolute essential watch because it asks a lot of big questions that people didn't even know to ask in 1993 when they saw it. They were probably just there to watch Sharon Stone and ugly-ass Billy Baldwin just getting freak nasty over and over again, I guess. So anyway, we will wrap this episode up with that. Check it out, Sliver from 1993. You are in for a treat. And hell, I even told you earlier to rewatch the Bourne movies. Plays in the same vein. Go for it. Just that surveillance society, right? Anyway, I will see all of you on the other side.